Well, hello again, traders, and welcome out. This is Ankit from Currencies here, and we are back with another market outlook. It's Monday, December the 12th. Let's get onto it. This is a very busy week, and hope everyone is prepared and getting ready for some volatility. So let's do a quick market analysis. As there's not a whole lot to discuss about today because all the eyes are on tomorrow for the US CPI. So let's see how the market did going into this. So the markets are actually holding it steady here. And again, we are still below this 200 moving average. And this is where it's more like market just waiting to break out one way or the other. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. We're likely to get a big candlestick. We get a 2% move one way or the other. Remember, back in November 10th, when we had the last CPI report, we got a nice little breakout. And that really charged the market higher. So again, that was a bit of a surprise when the numbers dropped. And tomorrow, again, the expectation is for the inflation numbers to come down. And again, I think at this point, market is waiting for the cues here. So nobody knows what's going to happen. And I think that's what we are. We're just kind of sitting and waiting to see a breakout one way or the other. So I think we'll probably would like to see a breakout, and after that we'll have a nice opportunity for this rest of the couple of weeks as we are ending the year. So that's where we are in the markets. And it was surprising to see that markets were actually doing a little bit better after pulling back last week, but I think right now markets are just undecided across the board. Same thing, World Stock Index, you can see that things are just sitting right wedge in between these moving averages. So I think tomorrow is going to be a breakout one way or the other. Now, looking at the cryptos, I mean, as you can see in this longer term chart, crypto really hasn't gone anywhere. So going into this, as you can see, there's a whole lot of chop. So this is not what you want to see if you're trying to play, a direction one way or the other. And this is very uninteresting price action. So again, all the focus then goes back into the currency market. I think that's where the equity markets and currency markets is where the bigger movements likely to happen, especially in the US dollar. So today, going into this report, again, the markets are strong, but we also saw yields and dollar also firmed up a little bit. So it's something we have to really pay attention to. We'll look at the charts and see, okay, which direction we really like, or way we get a bigger move. But I think right now, if you look at the movements here, on the CPI releases, you get this big surge of movement in the first few minutes, about 1% move. So I think regardless of what happens, we might get this movement either on the upside or the downside. And again, as you can see that if the dollar is strengthening, then that will kind of put some pressure on the Aussie and the Kiwi as they kind of lag today, even though the markets were strong. The correlation is not really with the markets. I think the correlation is really what the dollar is doing. So outside of that, you can see the gold pull back while the dollar firmed up. And oil was actually really strong, 2.71% overall. So a good movement today. And I think still doesn't leave us in a better place, because I think whatever happens tomorrow will likely to start to set some tone for the week, for the dollar especially, and finding out what the risk trends wants to do. Do we have a Santa Claus rally, coming up in this next couple of weeks? I think we are kind of waiting to see what that happens. So the outlook again is a +1. Again, we are right at the 20-day moving average. We're still above the 50-day moving average. This is a very strong level of resistance here. And again, every time early this year we rallied up to this, we ended up actually selling off. So I think tomorrow we could, if the number comes out weaker, I think we can just see an end of this and then get a big breakout. But if not, then we can easily fall lower and maybe likely to test the October low. So this is again a very tricky point. Again, if you want to have a comparable, take a look at 2018 markets. Back in 2018, in December, I mean, we were kind of in a similar situation. And then once we got that spark in the sell-off, we just really plummeted in the last couple of weeks of December. So outside of the CPI, I just want everyone to kind of see the schedule and say, well, it's not the dollar. There's a whole lot focus on everything this week. Again, this is, can't remember how we get this. Rarely we get these jam-packed weeks where, we have 4 central banks. We have all these these economic events on the top of that. So CPI is really what's going to start the fireworks tomorrow. And again, after that, again, Wednesday is another busy day with the FOMC. So there's a whole lot that we'll continue to discuss. But this is a kind of market where you want to be short-sighted. You want to take a look at, okay, what's moving in the next 24 hours? And that's what you want to focus on. And right now, dollar is really what the focus is on. And again, if that number comes out below expectation, now that's going to be bearish for the dollar. That's going to be bullish for the markets. If that number comes out stronger, I think then that would be bullish for the dollar and bearish for the markets. Again, I think all the data that we looked at last week, I think it'll be interesting to see what the Fed has to say on Wednesday as well. But we're looking for the initial price action off of this number. So expect some sort of slippages that could happen around that time. So making sure you're not really getting caught up in that volatility and just wait for the second stage entry. I think there'll be a bigger move outside. Once the initial dust settles, there'll be a good move after that. So let's do a quick currency analysis and see, okay, how things are looking here as far as the velocity goes going into tomorrow. So this was the scoring on Friday. As you can see, Friday, CAD was really, really weak, down -3. And Aussie and Kiwi was actually stronger. And you can see a whole lot kind of in between. So how things have transpired from Friday till today. You can see that the CAD score really improved. We went from a -2 to a +1. But I think outside of that, we saw the Aussie and Kiwi really, took down the ranking here, and then a lot of the things are still kind of in the middle here. So yen was really the outlier that was a -2. We'll take a look at dollar yen. But yen was acting nicely here today. But again, I think that's what the biggest move is going to be, where the dollar yen, the divergence. But outside of that, not a whole lot. There was a lot of things in the middle here, which again is very common to see when you are actually waiting for big events to happen. So let's take a look at percentage change. Let's see how the performance was today in crypto markets and the foreign currency market. So in the cryptos, you can see mixed bag. Can't really say, spot a trend here. So let's kind of jump quickly onto the currencies. You can see that in currencies, a lot of the currencies were like right in the middle here, +1, and we have the Aussie and the Kiwi as a -1. And again, look at the biggest move today was really in the dollar yen, with that divergence that's taking place. Swiss franc kind of lagged a little bit, but again, today was not a day where I can really take information and say, well, I think that's what's going to happen tomorrow, because tomorrow could be a whole different day. The one thing that we'll be paying attention to is the CAD, because CAD's been on a tear for this last few weeks. And we'll talk about how extreme those levels are. Now, we talked about it in the currency room as well, that CAD, Oz, and especially Kiwi has been sitting at some extreme levels. So today was the first day we saw the CAD really caught a break here. So that's something we'll need to pay attention to and see, okay, what happened outside of the dollar, what the CAD's likely to do, and then all the other currencies that are sitting at these extreme levels. So let's do a quick analysis and look at possible trades and talk about our upcoming 24 hours. So as you can see on the dollar chart here, and again, this is a currency basket here, so we're looking at it as an aggregate here. You can see that the dollar was not a big mover today. It's just holding steady. So let's take a look at the daily chart. Let's see where the dollar is right now. You can see the dollar has corrected quite a bit since the last CPI. Remember, we were sitting right here on this November 10th on the CPI, and that big move that really derailed the dollar. So we are kind of finding some support over here, but at the same time, if you look at the setup over here, we are still in a bearish trend here. I mean, we are making lower high, the lower high with a little rally here. So tomorrow, again, one or the other is going to happen. Either we break out or we break lower. I think that's the price action is very muted right now, but I think we will just get a big move one way or the other. It's anybody's guesses, it's a guessing game right now, because I think the CPI is very tough to kind of really spot and say, well, I think the inflation is coming down, and some people will say, no, I don't think it's going to really knock down as much. So I mean, it's your guess is, but it's very similar across the board. Could be across other traders. So that's what the dollar is doing. Let's take a look at what the yen is doing. I mean, you can see that yen is started to falter here. So this is again not a great sign if you're trying to buy the yen here. I don't think the yen is ready to run yet. I mean, if you take a look at the bond yields, the yen is still sitting at the same level. Nothing has really shifted from Bank of Japan. So right now you can see that it has been moving nicely up here. We got this nice little trend line going in here, but then we are now at the verge of breaking it. So I think this yen, the same thing as with what's going to happen with the dollar. I think the biggest movement is going to happen between dollar and yen, and that's where we could see all the dollar crosses, up huge or down huge, and we see the opposite in some of the yen crosses. So just keep in mind that's where you're going to get the biggest movement. So far you can see that the dollar yen is kind of firming up a little bit here. I mean, it's been kind of weakening here, and then here we are today trying to break out higher. It's the same thing. It's a wide range. Just got to keep in mind that this is 134 on a support, and the prior level of support, which was now the resistance, is at 138. That's a 400 pip range. But I mean, take a look at where we were. We were at 150 just not too long ago. So I mean, these are the wide ranges, and I think that's what makes it a little bit difficult to jump on early. You should, especially if you're in a long-term chart. These ranges are still kind of wide. But again, that's what you're dealing with. But that's why I like a second stage entry here, because I think after the initial breakout one way or the other, exactly what we saw like back in November, you see, like, it doesn't matter if you missed the initial move. There was a whole lot of follow through to catch. I think it's the same situation here. An initial move will happen, but there will be a lot of follow through to be had over there as well. So I think what you have to do is really look at the scenarios and say, well, what do you think the best pairing would be if the dollar strengthens, and what would be if the dollar weakens? So it's clear dollar yen is the one that really we're paying attention to. But outside of that, I mean, you can see that the Swiss franc is kind of holding steady. The euro is kind of holding it steady. I mean, if you take a look at euro dollar, I mean, lately, if you really look at going into this, I mean, euro dollar on a 4-hour chart is actually basing nicely here. So this is, again, could be a nice little breakout setup off of this. On a daily chart, you can see that it has some room for this to run. Again, maybe these are the ones that could really move in the next 24 to 48 hours. We already had quite a movement from, let's say, the Kiwi. I mean, if you look at the momentum of Kiwi, I mean, look at the run we had since October. So, I mean, I think the bigger moves we have to see, okay, what else is going to move, and that could give us a good return, like what we have seen in the Kiwi here. Aussie has definitely lagged, but you can see that the Aussie would be a better short on a break below. So but the European currencies are kind of holding it steady. I mean, look at pound. It looks like pound wants to go higher. So maybe we can take a look at things like the euro dollar, off the breakout. But again, if the dollar strengthen, I think there could be a little bit more further risk on currencies that have actually done really well going into this, and there's a little bit more correction that could come into those currencies. Same thing with the Aussie. If you take a look at Aussie dollar, and Aussie dollar, you can see it's just holding it in this pattern here. Things haven't really moved. I mean, it's crazy if you look at it. This is a monthly, almost going back a month. So since November 10th, when the initial move happened here, I mean, this thing hasn't really gone anywhere. So I think tomorrow could be a good catalyst to break out one with the other. On the other hand, we can see that the Kiwi dollar has had its run, but again, at the same time, the question is this move coming to an end? And again, let's take a look at on the daily chart. You can see the RSI still sitting at these overbought levels. But let's take a look at CAD as well, because I had a lot of questions about the CAD. Do you think CAD is turning now? You can see that the CAD is, I mean, it's whenever we get these kind of outsized moves in a very short period of time, there's always a risk for, a bit of a snapback. I mean, right now you can see that this is the prior support, or now is the resistance. If we can get above this, maybe the CAD has a little decent chance to rally. I mean, this has been so beaten hard here at this point. I mean, I don't really love the short. I would love to see this rally a little bit, maybe enter a short on the rally. But again, when you're sitting at these extreme levels, and you can go back in time and you can see, okay, a lot of times, we see a touch and go. Those are very short-lived movements, and you rarely get these where you're just sitting in this oversold level for this long time. So if you really want to go back in time, this really reminds me of 2015, when, if you can look at this, if you look at the pattern here, it looks very similar. We lost a lot of value in a short period of time, and it did stay in this zone here for a little bit longer before it really turn around. So I think that's what we are with the CAD. Definitely surprised with the amount of weakness that we have seen. And again, at these levels, it is attempting to make it a bit of a turnaround here, but we're still not out of the woods yet. I would love to see this get above this into the prior support. That would be nice level to really find this and say, well, maybe this is going to find a support here and maybe rally a little bit further from there. I mean, remember, like this whole year, dollar and CAD has been very anchored, and this is the first time entire year. I mean, we've seen this diverge so much. Look at dollar CAD. I mean, dollar CAD is still holding steady. I mean, if you take a look at this chart, you say, well, I think the dollar CAD is going to break out. I mean, that's how the chart is looking right now. There's a bit of consolidation taking place. But again, all we can do right now is, we can't really think about getting in beforehand because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. You can just draw the lines on these charts and see, okay, which way do you think it will move, and look for the initial breakout, and then we can kind of go for a follow through. I think that's the right strategy there, or look for a second stage entry. But if you're going in before that, remember the volatility is very high, or the spread's going to widen, and that's really not the right. That's where it's easier to get stopped out or take a bigger loss than what you actually anticipate. So I think we're pretty kind of clear on the things that we're looking at. We'll be looking at, again, the dollar yen will be the best one to look at the most divergence. And again, if the dollar rallies, then I think we can just take a look at anything else like the Aussie dollar or even Kiwi dollar or even the euro dollar. I think if a breakout could happen in all of these crosses, one way or the other. So that's the focus. With this increased volatility, like I said, look for dollar pairs, take a look at them, and then decide when you want to enter them. If you don't like volatility, you don't want to have slippages, then rather wait for a second stage entry on that and have a good proper position sizing. It's not a bad idea to reduce your position size just so you can avoid that kind of volatility. It allows you to sit through it and have a little bit of a wider stop and not get killed by that volatility. So I think tomorrow, just like what we have seen before, it could be bigger movement, lots of volatility. So stay focused. And again, if you missed trade initially, that's fine. This week is a very busy week. So don't take the eye off the ball and stay focused. Thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch. If you have any questions, always reach out. Otherwise, happy trading tomorrow. Cheers.